most gracious Heavenly Father, we do thank you, Lord, that you're there for us when we need you, Lord. And Lord, we get overwhelmed with life and with our situations and problems, Lord. But you're always there, and you see the end result, God. And you're always there to take us through this time, God. Thank you for doing that, Lord. You do with the preachers around and bring the message to us. And Lord, we just pray the Holy Spirit will be a good teacher for us tonight, Lord. We ask this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
I appreciate that, the Holy Spirit being the teacher. Anybody know how to do a PowerPoint, run a computer? John David, can you run? I don't see Jordan sitting there. I need somebody to push it. There, Bradley Wayne. Yeah. I'll turn them on. It's ready to go. It's on black outside. And the script is in your notebook right there. That don't mean I'm going to go by it, but. Yeah. All right, we're doing the journey to Rome. We're going to get there. Matter of fact, we might even get there tonight. Who knows? Acts 27 and 28. Okay. A little bit of review, as we always do, because I never know who's listening and never know who's joined us on the party line. Paul has had several hearings. He's had hearings in front of the Jewish high priest. He's had hearings in front of the governors and hearings in front of the king. He's working his way up. The idea was that you go through the lower courts to get to the Supreme Court, and that's what he's doing here. He has defended himself adequately, and nobody can find anything wrong. There we are. Nobody can find anything wrong with him. As a matter of fact, they said, he probably, if he hadn't appealed to Rome, he could have been turned loose. But why do you think, whether he appealed to Rome or not, why do you think he's going to go to Rome? Is there anything in his background that would tell you he's going to go to Rome? God has told him he's going to stand in front of kings. He's going to go. There's no doubt about it. He said if he had not appealed, you could have been turned loose, but he must go. He must go, not because they said so, but because God had said so. That brings us, number 7, Brad, that brings us to chapter 27 and verse number 3. We're on our way now. He has left from the port of Caesarea, which is the Myrtle Beach of that area over there. Everybody lived there that wanted to be there, especially the Roman governors and the kings, the royalty, all the big muckety-mucks. They all live over there. They had a great port built by King Herod the Great, the grandfather of the king that is in effect right now. And so they leave from there. And it says the next day we docked at Sidon, which is 70 miles. Let's back up. Let's read that verse of Scripture. Okay. That shows the route that he's coming from. But let's go back up. There, right there. We docked at Sidon, 70 miles. That's 70 miles from Caesarea. 70 miles in one day. Pretty good. Had pretty good weather on this little boat that he's got there. And Julius courteously entreated Paul. Does anybody remember who Julius is or was? He's the Roman centurion that's in charge of things. Julius courteously entreated Paul. Not that he's thinking that Paul is innocent. He knows Paul is innocent, but he courteously entreated Paul. Paul had a relationship with Julius, and that's going to be more and more evident as we get into this chapter and the one to come. He gave him liberty to go to his friends to receive care from them. Okay? Now, they've gone 70 miles. Okay? Let's go right on. Verse 4, when we had launched from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. This is what we talked about the other day. You're bucking a headwind. You heard that expression. When you buck a headwind, that means something in aviation and also in sailboating. And you have to do certain things to get going against the wind. It is possible. We sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. The wind in the Mediterranean blows from Gibraltar into it, and they're going against that. So you've got to kind of tack along the coastline. You don't want to go out in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Anybody in the Navy will tell you that's been on the Med, it's rough water, it's very deep, and it's very dangerous, especially in this little ship that he's on right there now. We had sailed, verse 5, we had sailed along the coasts of Cilicia and Pamphylia. We've heard those names before, haven't we? Cilicia and Pamphylia. Where have we heard those place names before? Cilicia and Pamphylia. That's where Paul went on his first missionary journey. He went through Cilicia. He lived right there in Cilicia, Tarsus, Cilicia. And then to Pamphylia, we came to Myra, and there it is, right up here at the very top. Let's see if I can find my little thingy. I don't know where my thingy is. Okay, you have to look. Right up at the very top. This is the route that they've taken. They've gone into that area between Cyprus and the mainland, basically calm. You stay close to you don't ever get where you can't see the land. You always got land in sight one way or the other, to your left or to your right. And then he's headed for Myra, which is, go ahead, say, right there, Myra, right there in the bottom. Right there. This is where they're headed for. They're going along that coastland, going up, headed toward Rome. Actually, coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. Now, it's necessary from that point, if you'll notice the map, and see down here at the bottom, Myra, look how rugged that country is. See the mountainous area that they're dealing with? That's what Paul went across on his first and second missionary journeys. This is not just an after-day stroll in the park. On those particular journeys, that is rough country. And Myra is the seaport that they go to. Everybody would have to go through Myra. We went on a mission trip one time to Idaho from our church in Wartburg, and they told us, when you get to Cheyenne, and I said, well, how do you know I'm going through Cheyenne? Because you got to go through Cheyenne. If you're going to cross the Rocky Mountains, you got to go through Cheyenne. That's one of those places that you kind of go. It's a choke point to go through. You got to. If you take the southern route down through Arizona, okay. But if you're going to cross the Rocky Mountain, you're going to go through Cheyenne, Wyoming. You're going to go through that because that's where the interstates and places all go. Myra is a place that you go if you're on your way. They go from Caesarea to Myra. Now, they have crossed an ocean, partly of this area right here, wide open ocean. Very dangerous, but they made it. They got there. All right, verse number 6. And there the centurion found us a ship to, what are we doing, brother? Hey, did Jordan steal that from? Okay, I got you. The centurion found us a ship from Alexandria. Alexandria is where? Alexandria, Egypt. Remember the code word, the 4 largest cities in the world. Raqqa, R-A-C-A, Rome, Alexandria, Corinth, and Antioch. Those 4 large cities in the area. He found a ship from Alexandria sailing to Italy, and he put us on it. Probably a food shuttle. More than likely, Egypt, you wouldn't know it today by being there, but Egypt was the grain center, the bread basket of the world. Remember when there was a famine in Israel and where they went? They all went down to Egypt. Jacob, all the Jewish people went down to Egypt because they had grain down there. Food supplies are going from Alexandria to Rome. Now, when it's a food supply to Rome, it becomes a state issue. And this ship, is under the jurisdiction of the emperor. It's under his protection, okay? So Julius, the centurion, has got a lot of help from the masters there in Rome as he's there. It's an official delivery mechanism, an Air Force One of this idea. He's on his way to Rome. Verse number 7, when we had sailed slowly many days, we came with great difficulty to the coast of Cnidus. How'd you like to live in Cnidus? Where are you from, Cnidus? C-N-I-D-U-S. Since the wind did not enable us to go any further, we sailed under the shelter of Crete over against Salmone. Now again, Crete is that island, and you have Cape Salmone on the extreme eastern side of it. They're up in the top. They come across to that. Hello? Don't you hate it when that happens, Wilma? Okay. Tell them to call you back, okay? Cape Salmone. Hey, it's getting louder. Hey. You know, that went off one time, and it was the theme song from Benny Hinn's television. You remember that? Anybody but Benny Hinn. Okay. One of them went off one time, and it was Bad to the Bone. I should write a book one of these days. One of these days, I probably will. The names will be changed to protect the innocent, though. Okay. Cape Salmone. Now, notice the bottom of the island. You're going to go along the bottom of the island here. You have Fair Havens, you have Lasea, and you have Phoenix. Now, just kind of follow along here. When we had sailed slowly many days, we came with great difficulty to the coast of Cnidus. Then we came under the shelter. Under the shelter, the wind is coming either from the west or from the north, and it's one of those westerly winds there. They sail under the shelter of Crete over against Salmone. That's all right. That's okay. The part of Cnidus was waiting there. It was a place where the sailors didn't want to stay. The sailors didn't like it there because probably didn't have enough beer joints or whatever, you know. They didn't want to do that. But we'll get by that, okay? Passing by it, verse 8, with great difficulty, we came to a place called the Fair Havens. The Fair Havens. With a name like that, you'd think that's a pretty good place for ships to dock and so forth. The Fair Haven. A haven is a place of rest. We have a song, the Haven of Rest. The haven means a place of rest. Near the city of Lasea, midway in the island of Crete. Now, generally, everybody stopped all along at those ports. They went all along. They never got away from the land. They always just kind of hedge-hopped along because out in the area where they're trying to go, it's very dangerous, particularly around November, December, January, February, March. In that particular area, what we would call the wintertime, extremely difficult circumstances. Look at verse 9. When much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was already past. Now he's gearing this. Luke is gearing that to the Jewish calendar. The fast would be the Day of Atonement, which happens in September, October. It tells us what the time period is. This is coming down toward hard winter now. It's in the autumn, and it's already past the Day of Atonement, which is the only day in Jewish culture where a fast is called for. A lot of people in Israel would say, I fast twice a day or twice a week or whatever, like the man that came to Jesus one time. Fasting was not in the normal thing, only on that one day were they told to fast, and that was the Day of Atonement. So the fast, the Day of Atonement, was now already past. Now, Paul is in touch with the master of the sea, and so he says something to them, and I think that Julius probably listens to him. Look at verse 10. He said to them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with much damage and great loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives are in danger. Now, Paul's been on this, not this particular ship perhaps, but he's been out there on this water before. He came back from his second missionary journey and his first missionary journey and his third missionary journey. He came back across there. He's been there. So you better listen to what he has to say. This centurion may not know a lot of things about the Navy. He's a foot soldier. He's an infantryman. He's Army, shall we say. So he should. You better listen to what this man says. Nevertheless, the centurion, who was the highest ranking officer, was persuaded by the pilot and the captain. Now, the captain is the man that owns the ship. What he says basically is going to go. He says we can do it. I guess we have to go. More so than the things which were spoken by Paul. Okay? In verse number 11, the centurion, Julius, was persuaded by the pilot. He's the man that's steering the boat to get through these treacherous waters. Okay? And by the captain or the owner of the ship. More so than what Paul said. Because who is Paul? He's just a criminal. They don't know him. Julius does. Julius has mixed emotions about this, and he's being drug into this thing here. So we come now to verse 12. Because the haven was not suitable in which to winter. Like I said, probably didn't have enough beer joints for the sailors, and there's 120 of these military people on that boat. Okay, it's a pretty good entourage. The majority reached a decision. Let's try it. Let's go to put out to sea from there, if somehow they can reach Phoenix. Phoenix is a further west. Keep going west. Keep on going there. And Phoenix is out there on that western edge of the Isle of Crete. And there to winter there. Probably more suitable, got more holiday inns and so forth. There to get on to further west, and was there to winter facing southwest and northwest, sheltered from the winds and so forth. Again, with the maps of Crete, you'll see that Phoenix is out there on the extreme western side. They've come from Cape Salmone through Fair Havens to Lassia. Now that they're at their very end right here, because that's the place, obviously, that they want to stay. Okay? Now, verse 13. When a moderate wind from the south. Now, see, they're protected from the northern winds and from the western winds. Also from the nor'easters coming in from the northeast. They're right there on the bottom of that island right there. But now then, a moderate wind from the south comes up. And supposing that they had attained their purpose and the gods were for them, they weighed anchor and began sailing in close to the island of Crete. Now, big mistake. Major mistake. Verse 14, not long after, there arose against it a tempestuous wind, and it's called in the English Euroclydon. The word for tempestuous is tuphonicus. Tuphonicus. Do you hear any English word in that? Tuphonicus? Typhoon. This is a major hurricane strength wind, a typhonic wind, tuphonicus, called Euraquilo or Euroclydon. That's the word for a northeastern. This is a nor'easter. This is coming down. They're out there. They had a nice little wind from the south coming up. They put the sails up, and they're kind of going out there in the water, out there in the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, and all of a sudden a typhoon hits them. Well, when they get caught by the typhoon, they're just caught. They've got no choice. They're just caught. They were not too far from Phoenix, but they were not going to be able to make it back there. It's coming in such that they can't get back to Phoenix. They're just out there. Verse 15, the ship was caught in that typhonic wind, the typhoon. They could not face the wind, so we just gave way to it. Had no other choice. When the ship was caught in it, verse 15, they could not face into the wind. We gave way to it and let ourselves be driven along. By giving way, what you would do is strike the sails, roll the sails up or roll them down, whichever way it was, and just trust to luck, I guess you might say. They're out there in the Mediterranean Sea. A typhoon has caught them, and they're just being driven along. Wherever God wants them to go, I suppose that's probably what's happening. Running under the shelter of a small island, verse 16, called Clauda. If you have your maps in the back of your Bibles, you can follow along there, but we've got them right here too. And we had much work to do to get the ship's small small boat under control. Now, what's going through your mind right now? We have a grain ship that's big enough to haul several hundred people, plus all the cargo, the grain and the bread and all that stuff that's under there. But this small dinghy, what is that all about, this small boat? What would you think that might be? They're having trouble with it. The rest of it they can kind of handle so far. But we had much work to get the ship's small boat under control. They're probably trailing a small dinghy, pulling it from behind. It's attached to the stern of the boat, and it's out there. It's probably a lifeboat, something that kind of comes along with it. And this little dinghy is going to be their downfall. This little small boat is becoming so waterlogged that the big boat can't go anywhere. It's just there, sailing the ship. They decided they're going to haul it in. Let's get it on board and let's fix it. So in verse 17, when they had hoisted it up, the small boat, they pulled it up. It's waterlogged. A waterlogged small boat, lifeboat, would be real heavy, you know. A wooden boat full of water, you have to get rid of it and all that. They bring it up. They used supporting cables to undergird the ship. Now, what's going on there? Anybody got an idea? They used supporting cables to undergird the ship. What are they doing? The boat, yes, but they're undergirding the ship. They used supporting cables to undergird the big boat, the ship. What is that? I'm sorry? Could something along that line. They're probably supporting it, undergirding it with reinforcement straps of some kind to keep it from breaking apart. Undergirding, coming across. The sailors, they kind of know what to do, but probably have never been caught in something like this because they're still alive, for one thing. You know, they're still there, fearing that they might run aground on the shallows of Syrtis in Cyrene. Cyrene. We've run across Simon the Cyrenian before. He's the one that helped Jesus carry the cross. Simon the Cyrenian. Cyrene is from Africa, North Africa, what we would know today as Libya, in that particular area. And so apparently there were some shallows, and I understand they're still there. I understand that big ships can't get that close to some of those so-called areas there in North Africa because it's extremely shallow water. The shallows of Syrtis in Cyrene. They let down the sea anchor and let themselves be driven. In my mind here, I can see that they've dropped off anchors off the rear of the thing, and they're just trying to hold it back. They're just trying to catch something under there to hold it back and at least stay in line with the way the wind is blowing. They've got no other choice than this. They can't sail into it. They can't really hoist a sail and let it push them because it'd be disaster to do that. So they're just out there at the mercy of it, and they have drifted all the way down, getting close to North Africa. They've gone across the Mediterranean Sea. I've got a map coming up here before too much longer that kind of shows you their route. I looked up Syrtis in my trusty Greek concordance. It's the name of two large sandbanks off the coast of Libya. Syrtis. Now, I think you can see it. Can you not see it for the flowers? It's right down at the bottom, in that bottom corner right there. What they've done, they've gone across. Oh, I've got a thing here. They've gone across from here, crossing the Mediterranean area out in this open water in the middle of a typhoon. They are in big trouble. I mean, big trouble. But let me think. God says you're going to go to Rome. So, is Paul in any danger of dying right here? Huh? He's got no choice in the matter. He's headed to Rome. That's what God told him to do. You say, well, he jumped out there ahead of, no, not necessarily. God told him he's going to go to Rome. So he's okay. He's all right. You can say that's hard shell Baptist. I kind of feel that way myself. I'm okay till God gets through with me, and then I'll go to the house. You know, that's exactly the way it is. The Bible clearly says that he's on his way to stand in front of kings. And so he's going to get there. He's going to say so here in just a few minutes too. And he's going to win friends and influence people by his calmness under this horrible, can you imagine wind, rain, blowing, all this noise and all this stuff, people hollering, screaming, what are we going to do? What are we going? It's mass chaos. And the only one that's got any coolness about him is Paul, even Julius and the rest of it. Look what happens in verses 18 and 19. We, Luke includes himself in it, we, being violently storm-tossed, the next day they begin jettisoning the cargo. Now, what is their cargo? Grain. That's highly important. It is so important for their lives to be saved, they're going to throw away the food that they had in the cargo of the ship, and probably fresh water. And the third day, we cast out with our own hands, we, meaning Luke and others, the tackling of the ship. The tackling of a sailboat would be all the ropes, the sails, the booms, the mizzen booms, and all that kind of stuff that goes on with the ship. They're throwing everything overboard. Anything that would weight them down or cause them to that, they just continue throwing all the equipment. And that would indicate that they're taking on water. They're leaking or they're coming in off the top. You can imagine how high the waves were. Just mass chaos here on this rather small, not an ocean going Queen Mary. It's not like the Titanic. Well, certainly hope not like the Titanic. It's certainly not that big, but it's a grain vessel, and it's taking on water. Now add to this, verse 20. When neither sun nor stars appeared, what's the problem with that? The navigation. They have no idea where they are. They have no idea where they're going. They don't even know which direction they're going because the stars, the navigation stars, they're gone. And no small tempest, I love the King James in this, no small tempest was assailing us. All hope of being saved was gradually, hour by hour by hour, being abandoned. They began to say, we're done. All the soldiers, everybody, even the captain, even the pilots, all these people. Look at verse 21. Cool Hand Luke is coming up to the forefront now. After a long time without food, probably, as we're going to see, about 3 days. They haven't eaten anything in about 3 days, haven't rested, haven't slept, anything. Sirs, you should have hearkened. I told you so. You should have hearkened unto me. I told you not to leave. Paul is not one to say, I'm right and you're wrong, but he's getting the point across here. If we'd never left Fair Havens or Phoenix, you should have listened to me. We would never have loosed from Crete, and we wouldn't have gained this harm and loss. There's another problem with them. You ever been seasick? Have you? Not very pleasant, is it? We went from wherever we went from to the island of Catalina. When Eddie was stationed out there at Edwards Air Force Base, he took us down to the Isle of Catalina, and we went out there on a boat. And Eddie's wife was the sickest I've ever seen a human being sick. I'm telling you, she lived on the rail, if you know what that means. It was the sickest sick I've ever seen and I've seen people drunk on moonshine before that's not that sick. I mean, I'm telling you, it was not a pretty sight. And they're probably starving, they're scared, they're sick. They've thrown a lot of the food overboard here. And here's Paul standing up and said, you should have listened to me. I'm going to take up an offering here directly. You should have listened to me. So now I want to encourage you, verse 22. Keep up your courage. Because I'm telling you, there's not going to be the loss of any man's life. Who are you? I'm the Apostle Paul. There's not going to be, we're not going to lose the life of anybody, but we are going to lose the ship. We're going to lose the ship. But nobody's going to die if you'll stick with me. Just stay with me, okay? I like him because he's the one that has the courage of God, and he can settle them all down. For there stood by me tonight an angel of the God. Now that word "the" is the definite article. This is a microphone. Now if I said this is the microphone, what's the difference? If it's the microphone, there is no other. This is a microphone. It is one of many. And in the Greek, if you have that definite article ha, H, it's just the letter O with a breathing sound. It's pronounced ha, H-A. That's a definite article. The God. Now you should have listened to me, because I stood tonight in front of an angel from the God. Remember, they had gods, all these Roman soldiers, they had gods for everything. The Roman gods, you studied them in 6th grade. I hated it. I don't care about who Hercules was. I never did care about Myrtis and Hercules and Diana and all those other Greek and Roman gods. And they had gods for everything, just like Egypt. They had gods for everything. The God, whose I am is possessive. Meaning what? I belong to him, whose I am, and whom I serve. I belong to God, and I serve him. And here's what he told me. Paul, don't be afraid. Now, okay, I could tell you that, and okay, that's fine. But put yourself in their shoes. A typhoon is driving them. They don't know where. They have no idea where they are and where they're going, and they're throwing everything overboard. All the tackling, the sails, and all that stuff is out there. The anchors, they still got the anchors. They're going to throw them over here directly. All the ropes, the food, the water. And Paul says, don't be afraid. Come on now, get real. Put yourself in their position. God says, don't be afraid. You must be brought before Caesar. And God has given you all of these people who are with you. You all belong to me, Paul says. God gave you to me. You're in my hands. Don't be afraid. Not only that, look at the next verse, 25 and 26. Not only don't be afraid, but be of good cheer. Let's have a party. Come on now. I mean, you can go too far with this little Pollyanna, good-natured cheerfulness. Everything's going to be okay, I'm okay, you're okay type stuff here. Be of good cheer. Why? Because I believe God. I believe it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we're going to lose the boat. We're going to run the ship aground on a certain island. I have no idea where. If you ask me which island, I don't know. I don't even know where we are. Do you know where we are? How about you, Fadine? You know where we are? How about Charlie? You know where we are? Hey, about there, Wayne? You know where we are? Nobody knows where we are. But we're going to run aground on an island. And we're going to lose the boat, but everybody's going to be okay. All right. Let's just say that this half over here believes Paul. This half doesn't. You're still upset. Don, you're still just running around saying, we're going to die, the sky's falling. And over here they're saying, hang in there now, it's going to be okay. We don't have anything to toast our good fortune with, but let's just have a party and let's just trust his God. That man right there has got sense. All right, I believe God. Now it says in verse 27, when the 14th night was come, that's a long time, isn't it? That's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks of this typhoon. It's caught them right in the eye. Right. as we were driven across the eastern Mediterranean Sea, about midnight, the shipmen thought that they drew near to some land. Now, the 14th day is when they launched from Fairhavens and Phoenix over there. So they've been out there for 14 days just going wherever they're going. And somebody said, I think I hear land. What would they be hearing? Birds, right, seagulls. Even in a storm, they're out there. That's probably what everybody's looking for, because the birds can't get too far from land. So they probably may have even heard the waves crashing on the shore, whatever. And they sounded meaning they checked the depth, and found it to be 20 fathoms deep. Now, I did a little ciphering here. I don't know what a fathom is, but it's 6 feet. Don't have any idea what a knot is in aircraft speed, or 20 knots and 40 knots. I don't know what all that means. But a fathom is 6 feet. It's 20 fathoms deep. That's interesting. 20 fathoms, 120 feet. That's pretty deep. But they did it again, and we found it to be 15 fathoms. That's 90 feet. It's getting shallower. Now, that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing. A good thing is because we're probably getting close to land. The bad thing is we're getting close to land. We have no idea where we are, and we can't stop this thing. This thing is going wherever the wind takes it. We have no way of knowing what's going to happen. And it's dark, midnight. It's midnight. They can't see. The stars are gone. They can't see anything. Then fearing, verse 29, fearing that we might run aground somewhere on the rocks, they cast out 4 anchors out of the stern, the back of the boat, and wished for the day, praying for daytime, praying for daylight. Let the sun come up, Lord. I'll do anything. I promise I'll be good. Just let it come up. Let the sun come up. They threw 4 anchors out of the stern. Those are backstopping anchors, trying to slow the progress down. Verse 30 gets rougher. The shipmen were about to jump out of the boat when they had let down the little boat. Aha! You thought we'd forgot about that little dinghy, huh? They had let it down into the sea on the pretense that they were going to lay out anchors. We're going to protect these anchors that we've got here. So let's get in the little boat there and let's figure out where those anchors are. On the pretense that they were going to lay out anchors out of the boat. And Paul says to the centurion, now, sir, Captain Julius, you're in charge. But if those guys don't get back in the ship, you're going to lose everything. You yourself cannot be saved. They've got to get back in. They've got to trust us. They've got to trust you. They've got to trust me. And they've got to trust my God. They're trying to flee. They're trying to fly the coop, as we would say. They're going to get in that little boat, cut it loose, and be gone. I don't know why. Looks to me like the bigger boat would be, I don't know. Who knows what people do when they're scared. Todd, why did you do that when you were scared? Why did you jump in the little boat? You thought you could make it? Probably so. Nobody knows where you are, but you won't run aground on 90 foot of water. You know, the big boat's going to here directly. Then the soldiers cut off the... there's something about burning the bridges behind you. Look at that verse 32. The soldiers cut off the ropes of the ship's small boat. Say what? What'd they do? Come on now, what'd they do? They cut that rope that's tying that little boat to the big boat and let her go away. Now, it's burning your bridges. It's burning your bridges behind you. Who was it, Hannibal, when he crossed the Alps? He burned the bridges behind him, meaning I can't go back. Only place I can go is forward. Burning your bridges behind you. They cut the ropes of the ship's small boat and let her, bye-bye, fall away. While the day was coming up. Now we're seeing a little bit of sunshine coming up. It's beginning. Look to the east over yonder, and you'll see a little bit of sun. Paul besought them all, boys, you got to eat. You got to eat. I don't know where they probably had enough to get something here that they could all just said, you have tarried 14 days fasting. You've taken nothing for 14 days. How can they fight a typhoon when they haven't eaten in 14 days? Says, you've got to eat. We're going to need you. So I encourage you, verse 34, to take some food, for this is for your health, and there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you. Trust me on this, guys. When he had thus spoken, Paul makes himself an example. He took some bread. He gave thanks to God. Lord, I thank you for this sumptuous meal that we're about to receive here. Help us to use it, strengthen our bodies with it, and thank you for it. When he broke it, he began to eat. He allowed himself to become an example for them. And so they all were encouraged. Verse 36, 37, they began to take some food, and all of them in the ship, 276 souls. 200 soldiers, 2 centurions were there. So 276 people, prisoners, sailors, and all. Then when they ate enough, they began to lighten the ship by throwing all the rest of the food into the sea. And when it was day, verse 39, they knew not what land it was, but they knew they had discovered land. I found it, Eureka. It had a certain bay with a beach. Bay with a beach, into which, if we can aim it toward that little boat, that little island right there, it's got a beach. Now, they're used to rocky. Remember how rocky it was over there at Meyer? How rocky it was, and all like the Pacific coast, all those rocks and stuff. They're going to drive the ship into that bay with a beach, drive it right in there if they could. Verse 39. Verse 40. When they had taken up the anchors, they threw them in the sea. Now you're committed. Now you've thrown everything out. You've got no way to stop. You don't have any oars to go. You've got no sails. You've got no ropes. You've got nothing. They've taken up the anchors, cast them into the sea. They committed themselves to the sea. They loosed the rudder bands. Rudder bands are like an autopilot. They lash the rudder, which it was actually a long oar in this case, out the back, and it's steered by having that rudder moving so they had it lashed down, locked it straight ahead. Now then they took those ropes off, and they're going to try to steer that thing. They got no way to propel it, but they're going to try to steer it, and they're headed for that island with a bay with a beach. They come, verse 41, falling into a place where 2 seas meet. Now, let's go one step forward. Okay, right there it is. That is the island that they landed on. They know because he tells us which island it is. 2 seas meet here and here. They're headed right into this area right here where these 2 seas meet. It's a sandy beach, and it's smooth water. They ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the stern, can you see it in your mind? The front of that thing is stuck in that sand, but the back of it is out there in the middle of that typhoon, just moving back and forth, and what's going to happen to it? It's going to break up. It's just moving, and ships are not designed to do that. They're designed to float, but they're not designed to do this. Okay, this thing is stuck in the sand, stuck in the mud. It's grounded. The stern decide they're going to kill all the prisoners. Let's do these guys in. They're going to, as per the Roman protocol, because they're going to jump. Would they be worried about that? We're in the middle of a typhoon here. The big deal is if you lose your prisoner, what happens to you? You die. Does that bring you more in touch with the force of the centurion? Verse 43, willing to save Paul. Well, oh yeah, okay. We got a couple more verses here. Maybe what land remained alive? Malta, which is right off there, the island of Malta. You're okay. You're safe. Problems away, but he said he'd be with us. God has brought you through. But there are things that you may not have even been what you were about. Now,
With that and not be able to find out what was going on. And for some reason, I couldn't take it.
yeah, stuff, yeah.
And when I looked back, I was still thinking there's no doubt.
None of them did. No, I got you. I understand. Precious, precious times that you look. Would you lead us in prayer, please, to dismiss? Amen. God bless you, folks.